But now we'll start. Good afternoon, this is Nick Leo, and on this day, which is December 4th, welcome everyone. We have one big item, and that is the land, water, and people acknowledgement statement and how we treat it and what we do with it. And this is really a continuation of a lot of the work we've been doing thanks to our American Indian Advisory Council. But first, we have minutes from our meeting on November 20th, 2024. Is there a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Move approval.
Second?
Thank you, thank you. Any discussion, corrections, additions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That is, minutes are approved. So, Councilmember Carter, I'm looking at Tony Carter. You,
My twin sister.
and this is something that you are advancing. This is not for vote, but it's really for a conversation and understanding today. And,
Thank you.
so, do you want to lead this off?
Yes, I will, and
Thank
thank you very, very much. We are fortunate to have the opportunity to consider the statements, the acknowledgement statements that have been brought to us by the American Indian Advisory Council. We have considered them before at committee of the whole, and we will have the opportunity today, having not landed on a specific direction at our last committee of the whole meeting, to consider tonight a recommendation that is coming from our regional development group, the work group, myself, Councilmember Lilligren, Councilmember Cedarberg, and Councilmember Johnson have had the opportunity to, in the work group, consider again and determine recommendations that we would make to bring before you. So we'll have a few slides that will introduce the work. As we know, and there should be slides, right?
Yep, there's
And
signs.
so there are some slides coming up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see, number.
So, I'll just get started, and the slides will join us in a little bit. As we know, we've been working with the American Indian Advisory Council as a part of the Council's Imagine 2050 planning process. And this has been a partnership and an exemplary process of work occurring, and a process that models what it looks like to put our equity framework into action in significant ways, developing partnerships as we go in this work. So thanks to Allison Locke, Angela Torres, and Gillian Greenberg on our team for their work in establishing the Advisory Council and in supporting their conversations and recommendations, and also in bringing these materials forward to us. Thank you. Okay, so I do select, sorry about that. Okay. At a special committee meeting of the whole held at the Minneapolis American Indian Center in September, the American Indian Advisory Council had presented their recommendations for council's commitment to the council, for the council to include in the Imagine 2050 and more broadly across our organizations. The Advisory Council had stressed the importance of an organization's commitments rather than just land acknowledgements done in isolation. As a part of the recommended council commitments, the Advisory Council recommended that the council lead in publicly recognizing the genocide and the displacement that American Indian communities have suffered, have survived, and continue to endure, indicating that the Advisory Council would draft a land, water, and people acknowledgement statement for the council and to include it in Imagine 2050. I'm moving too fast. At the Committee of the Whole on October 16th, the council staff presented the land, water, and people acknowledgement and recommendations from the American Indian Council. This included both a long statement and also a short statement and recommendations for how the statements would be used. The committee discussed the matter but did not have clear direction for next steps. Then the Regional Development Guide Work Group met and discussed potential next steps in moving forward. The Regional Development Guide Work Group is returning now with a recommendation for moving forward toward those next steps. And we're clear that this is going to come to the council for approval. This is not, we're not asking you to vote on this matter tonight. But we did want to be sure, having had the opportunity, the four of us, to discuss and to land on recommendations, to share them with the entire body in this committee of the whole as we prepare to move forward with an item on an upcoming council agenda. So the original materials were posted, which were posted at the October 16th committee of the whole meeting, are included on the agenda and with your packets. The work group recommendations are in the information item and starting on this slide with the short statement. So the short statement would be read at the beginning of all Met Council business meetings and at the committee of the whole, where we are all together. Optionally then, chairs of other standing committees, including the community development, the management, the environment, and the transportation committee, would choose to read the statement according to their desire, the short acknowledgement at the beginning of their meetings. Optionally also, chairs of other Metropolitan Council committees and leaders of public engagement processes and meetings could choose whether to read the statement at the beginning of their meetings. Included in written form, the statement would be also included in written form on the webpage of the council and with posted agendas for the Metropolitan Council and for council committees. The statement would also be included in public-facing planning documents and in employee onboarding, orientation, and continuing education. It would be adapted for use also in Metropolitan Council buildings and at our facilities, including here at Robert Street, at Haywood, and at Metro Plaza. The long statement would be included on Met Council webpage, a Met Council webpage about the American Indian and tribal relations, and it would be used where recognition or moments of reflection are appropriate and needed, and in our organization's education processes. It would also be included as a part of educational resources for employees, for residents, for local governments. Those are the recommendations that the Regional Development Work Group has developed and is presenting for you today. The work group, as I said, had the opportunity to have robust discussion. Most of that discussion focusing on the appreciation for the work that has been done by the group and by our employees in working together with the group. It also focused on whether the statement or how the statement should be used, and focusing on these specific recommendations that are being brought before you today. It also, I recall we talked a lot about our initial understanding from the group that they were not as much concerned about the statement as they were about the commitments. That was very, very important to the group. And in recognizing the commitments that were being made and the positive result of a partnership and relationship, the group brought back to us then the recommendations for use of the statement, long and short, and we were able to deliberate through that and to make these specific recommendations today. Because we had robust discussion, I want to make certain that the members who are here have the opportunity to share with you their thoughts. And we also want to make certain that you have the opportunity to share your thoughts as we consider in moving forward these recommendations. Thank you very much. That's what I have, but I want to just ask Robert and Gail also.
Go for it.
Yeah, I appreciate that we did have a really good discussion at the Regional Development Work Group, and I think we're all in agreement with these recommendations as well. And I think everybody was able to share their version of what they were thinking, and we really want to be at a place where when we're reading the acknowledgement, the short version is the one that we want to read, so it's not just a time for people to check their phones, but it's a time to listen to what it's done. And then when we're talking about the different meetings, we thought that it was really important when we're all together at the committee and the whole and our business meetings, that it's read there, and leave it up to the other committees and the other committee chairs as to how they want to integrate it into their meetings as well. So I think it was a good discussion, and
Thanks, and I just lift up what Gail said and Tony, and really thank Councilmember Carter for her leadership here, and I agree with what's been saying, supportive of the recommendations, and I really like the discretion that's given to committee chairs to read it, not read it, and one of the things that just occurred to me sitting here that I hadn't thought of before is there are pieces of it, right? You can pick out part of it if you know, at a committee meeting or something, so I love that discretion. Two other things I just want to note, and one of them is the acknowledgement within the short statement, I think it's the last sentence, that references the 150 diverse tribal nations that call the 7-county region home. And so I just think that's a huge step. I mean, it's not the way that governments often work. It's usually government to government, state to tribal government. And so I wanna acknowledge that and recognize that we're breaking new ground here. And the other is, and this is never a pleasant word to say out loud, but it's in our statement, and so we'll be hearing it said out loud, but as the acknowledgement of genocide, dispossession, but that word genocide, and back in my Minneapolis City Council career during the sesquicentennial of the city and the state, for that matter, we passed a statement recognizing, past harms done, and as the lead author on that, I had intentionally kind of loaded language into it that I thought, okay, we can take this out to satisfy, this council member maybe, and was prepared for that and focused on, it was really similar language actually to this on genocide, dispossession and things, and amazingly, or at least it amazed me, none of my council colleagues, that was what they objected to. There were a few other kind of technical words, but I just feel like that indicates that we're in a different day, right? And we're in a time when we need to acknowledge these things so that we can move on in an authentic way toward healing, to having an equitable region. And so yeah, thanks to Allison, and who else is in here? Angela, and who else? Jillian, yeah, for this work. I mean, this is groundbreaking work. And I guess since I have the floor for a second, I'll just say how much traction Met Council is getting for this work in the Native community. And people are saying you're doing it right, this is how everyone should do it, we should teach other units of government or organizations how you did it. And so, yay us, and I think we have something that'll really serve the region. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert, and Allison, and everyone involved. This is the right time, given the work we've been doing and being ahead of the regional development guide, which is this specifically, but it is all encapsulated in kind of talking about and acting on those commitments as opposed to just words on a page. But speaking of words on a page, and I'm just gonna have a clarification question and then we kind of open it up. I was getting an email earlier today from Judy who says so the idea here, the recommendation is we read it as part of the formal council meetings, committee of the whole, which is all of us together. And then would it appear on, say, the agenda? I mean, would the statement be written kind of the bottom or the top somewhere?
Yeah.
And Judy was saying maybe it doesn't need to be, maybe it should be on the agenda as land acknowledgement, just the words land acknowledgement, but then it's printed somewhere else, or how does it actually, how would you envision actually presenting?
And so, as an individual, I have the opportunity of sharing, having lived at Ramsey County.
Yeah.
And and we printed it as land, and you're gonna check me on this. We printed it as land acknowledgement in the agenda.
Oh, okay.
And then it was read at the top of every agenda by a commissioner.
Yeah.
And so we would rotate that
Oh, okay.
responsibility to read it as we rotated the opportunity for the agenda to be presented. That was a part of our process.
Okay,
And we don't have that process here.
right.
So we could consider how it's read differently, but that is how we did it.
Okay.
The
And
chair
then,
could read it, you know.
and then that's just something to consider. Okay. Yeah, Cam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also wanted to just mention the reason that I think we're able to come to agreement is because of the incredible effort the American Indian Advisory Council did. The fact, and maybe that's really when we want to make change, the level of effort and the condensed time is maybe an example for how other things could be done at the Met Council for advisory boards as well. Because I think that this didn't languish over 12 months or 18 months. You know, it was really incredible, the effort they put into and the number of meetings, and they condensed it. And I think that's why we're here today, by the end of the year, being able to put this in our 2025 plan and really start 2025 where we should be starting. And I just think it's an example for how we can condense other things that we are working on in a similar fashion to resolve things a lot quicker and to really do some action faster.
Great.
It was, okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's right, Reva.
Oh, thank you. I really just wanted to acknowledge the care that has been taken throughout this entire process and the land, water, and people acknowledgement having meaning to the people who have been affected. And by taking care in the acknowledgements, the sincerity that comes with that, which is what I understood by Councilmember Lilligren to mean, that having the discretion is part of your genuine commitment to make that statement, and the genuine commitment meaning more than the statement itself. It's almost like a communion type situation that you hold sacred. You take a moment and think about what it means to you before you say it. And then it has more reach, more personal reach and meaning.
Yeah, totally. Deb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments. I will say when I saw this coming up tonight, I had some concerns based off of our meeting with the American Indian Advisory Council, because I think they made it very clear that they were not fond of acknowledgement statements, that they were very, very interested in the commitments, and that was really where the leverage was, and I 100% agree with that. I've been in many other regions and things like that where when acknowledgement statements are used, but they get overused. And then then they're just words that are said at a meeting and nobody's paying attention. I appreciate how we phrase some of this. I ran it past my family. For those who don't know, my husband is a member of one of those 150 tribal nations. He's a member of the Confederate Salish Kootenai tribe. My children are descendants. Their fear was that if it's used too much, the authenticity and meaning is gone. And so to me, like, I do want it definitely tied for sure with Met Council at this level. I think it's also important for things where land is impacted, like ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings, where you're actually disrupting, changing, doing something. But I do think we need to be somewhat careful of not overusing it, otherwise it become hollow words. And I've seen that happen. You know, you go to some other regions and it's said before every single meeting and people aren't listening. And that is my fear, because then you're no longer actually recognizing the people that you're trying to recognize. And I do appreciate two very key things in here. One, that all the 150 tribes are recognized. I don't think that happens often enough because I would say our Indian nations are all over, within every community all over the country, so I'm happy to see that recognized. And I'm also happy to see the word genocide. I know that's very controversial, but this is not, if the largest, one of the largest genocides in history, and it's very important that be recognized. So I have mixed feelings.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments, questions, Dr. Hurd?
Yeah, first of all, I'd say congratulations to everybody, Tony, everyone else that was involved in this effort. This is, I think, pretty amazing. Of course, and I've said this before, the original sin was the genocide that was conducted against Native Americans. So I think, but I noticed one thing at the sunrise ceremony. He said, this is not just Native Americans, this is for everyone. So what you're doing is really planting fertile ground, and you're making it a lot easier for you to acknowledge other wrongs and to try to come up with ways to try to fix those wrongs. So first you have to try to fix the original sin, which can never be fixed, but at least you're walking towards it. And it's never going to be perfect because we're imperfect, and you have imperfect people trying to come up with a perfect way of solving something. It's always going to be imperfections there, but at least we're moving forward. And then we encourage our organization to move forward in other areas because we're moving forward in this. So it's a journey of 1,000 miles. We're taking a few steps, and I congratulate and applaud everybody for doing that.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, questions? Mr. R.A.?
So, I'm gonna talk process, because that's my job.
Sure.
Mr. Chair and members, so on the process side, we were working on a resolution that would ultimately come before the council to codify the conversation you're having here tonight into actionable steps here. I don't know if it's our next meeting or it's in January. Do you know, Lisa?
January.
It's in January, not our next meeting, so it'll come forward. I just, as we were coming in today, I was forgetting that we had set the process last week and I was trying to remember what it was, just so everyone could track on that piece particularly.
And I think we and this is a helpful conversation, not to kind of share our feelings about embracing this, but also how do we use it, how are we comfortable using it, allowing discretion for committees, committee chairs, really instilling it as part of our practice for committees as a whole or formal council meetings. And I have to say, as chair, I really appreciate that. I think it's very important, and maybe it doesn't need to be written the same way, but I think acknowledging that we are a council that embrace action and commitments, not just words, but having and saying the words gives meaning to what they are, because we are saying it out loud. And I think that in a way we got to make sure to Councilmember Barber's point that it doesn't become rote, meaningless. How many people think about the Pledge of Allegiance, or if that's meaningful for you or others. But the fact that it is shared and is shared together, it has meaning. So, I think it's really time for us to do that in the larger, particularly in the larger context of these commitments, which have specific action. This is one of them.
Mr. Chair, sorry, one last process suggestion too. This is a good topic to engage with the leadership group of the committee chairs with the chair every other month or monthly to talk a little bit about.
Just so happens we have a meeting.
It just so happens there might be one coming up where we can come back and do some follow-up too on how we're thinking both about consistency as well as opportunity for each committee chair to think about the right fit. So use the structures of the organization to think that through thoughtfully based on the conversation here today.
Yeah, I agree. Good.
Mr. Chair, I would add one final comment.
Yes.
And that is that I feel very, very fortunate to have been able to lead the discussion at our work group I'm very thankful for the participation of our committee members, for Gail, for Robert, for Judy, and for all of the deliberation that we were able to do together. We have thanked together already our staff and members of the American Indian Community Group came together. I need to make certain to also thank Councilmember Lilligren for your years of work in ensuring that this relationship has been built forward in the way that it has. And so thank you very much for your discussion tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, for your effort and your leadership and helping lead the conversation. And certainly, Robert, this is just continues to have what we as Met Council can look and say we're doing this the right way. It's good to hear. And with that, we could talk more, but I think we're all in agreement. We're going forward. We'll have to kind of put together a process here on that in terms of how this is adopted. I think we're really looking at starting this practice with the new year, or close to it. Yeah. Does anybody else have any thoughts or questions about it? And while we're all here, I just want to take a moment on a completely different subject to acknowledge our council member Sue Vento, who maybe has spoken to some of you, has submitted her letter of resignation from the council. She's not here tonight, but she's not leaving the council tonight. She really wants to have a process of transition. So into whether that's February or sometime. I think for a number of personal reasons, she realizes, you know what, this is a great enterprise and efforts, and she believes in it. She also has been a stalwart contributor in so many different ways. So I just want to make sure, I want to say that publicly, and I'm not going to send out an email, but I want you all to know that and say it publicly. It's not a secret. The governor's office knows. This letter was not to me, it was to the governor. But we'll work on ideas and ways to recruit a new member from that district and make sure that an area of the metro is not underrepresented or unrepresented, as if we had a time there 3 years ago where it was. We went through a period of time where it wasn't represented very well, so we'll work on that.
And Mr. Chair, just, I know you're thinking this way,
Yeah.
but really honor her work here and
Yeah.
recognize that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this behind her back. I knew she couldn't be here, but I asked her,
Sure.
I said, you want to, and she goes, no. Yeah. So you all know. You could see, I could cry on her behalf. That would be more authentic. I don't really care about so much, but yeah, we'll have an opportunity
Great.
to honor her in the future, not tonight, but we will, certainly. Great partner for us. With that, anything else from anybody? Thank you for making the trip in the middle of a chilly December day. But we'll see you all soon. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.